Revelation 2745. From the 18th of May 1943. God's help. Grace. Benefit of free will. The worldly-minded person does not make use of God's grace. It is certainly available to him to the same extent, but he does not use it, he has no desire for it, and therefore does not request it either. To stand in God's grace means to be given all means for the soul's higher development, thus to always and everywhere find help that enables the soul to mature. But the worldly-minded person does not strive for the soul's state of maturity, consequently he also takes no notice of the means of help, he does not need them, he ignores God's grace and without divine help is too weak to reach his goal on earth. He will constantly pass by all opportunities which would be beneficial for his soul. For even if the human being makes no use whatsoever of God's grace, God nevertheless does not let him go hungry, thus he does not completely withdraw from him by leaving him thoughtless, thus by excluding him from the bestowal of grace, but time and again he brings himself close to the human being throughout his whole life. Time and again he shows him the right path, he leads his servants to him, time and again he, so to speak, offers him grace because he wants to win the human being over for himself. But the human being's free will has to become active to accept grace if he wants to be spiritually successful. He must consciously make use of God's help. But most worldly-minded people are without all faith, and consequently they do not make use of something which is based on faith alone. They don't ask for help because they don't believe themselves to be in need and because they don't recognize any power which could help them when they need help. They don't feel their spiritual hardship, earthly life is fully sufficient for them, and they use all their vitality to create an earthly life of well-being for themselves. Their spiritual development, however, is so far removed from their thinking that they don't muster the slightest strength for it and also don't feel their lack of strength, consequently they don't request help and therefore don't grasp the help if it is offered to them in the form of enlightenment by knowledgeable people. For every attempt by a spiritually striving person to bring his worldly fellow human being onto the same path of striving is already a grace. It is help which God sends to the latter through a human being if he does not obviously express himself in order not to endanger the human being's freedom of faith. But if the human being rejects it, he has not accepted God's grace, he has spurned it and therefore remains spiritually on the same low level, because in his deprived state he has to be offered active help, and without it he will never be able to overcome his love for the world, which, however, is an obstacle to spiritual striving. The human being as such is too weak to overcome all his faults and cravings, but he can do so with God's help, with the grace which is offered to him time and again by his love and which he need only use in order to mature spiritually as long as he still lives on earth. Amen.